Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. And on today's edition of Sports from the Couch, did Ryan Pace destroy the Chicago Bears? Is Justin Fields his only savior? We get into all that and so much more. But before we do that, let's take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at MikeMMedia, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcasts on all major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves. Check out the video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Make sure you hit that little bell and hit the subscribe button to be notified every single time we upload a brand new episode of Sports from the Couch. We're also on Roku. Shout out to Jerry Riles and the team over at The Rewind Sports 60. Check us out. That's Roku at The Rewind Sports 60. If you would like to become a producer of the network or of Sports from the Couch, you would like your advertisement right here on the show, visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Check out how you become a producer. Buy us a cup of coffee. Show us some love. Either way, we love you. It's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Do us a favor, like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. You can check us out over at Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. There we go live, and we also update and upload these marathon episodes of Sports from the Couch and some of these other shows. So we suggest you guys check us out over at twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. And of course, keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network by following us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. There you will keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network, from the Good Brothers, the Two Nerds of a Feather podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, Sports from the Couch, Murder Mysteries, and more. Our interviews with athletes and celebrities. That's Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Alrighty, guys. So let's get into today's edition of the show. So I was checking out our friends over at the Chicago Tribune, and over the last few episodes, we've been talking a lot of Bulls. So we had to talk about the team that's starting in just a few days, just less than over a week and a half. The Chicago Bears will play their first game Sunday night against the LA Rams, and we know Andy Dalton will be the starting quarterback, barring anything crazy happening over the next few days, and Justin Fields will be doing scout team and all this other stuff, right? So I saw this article from the one and only Brad Bakes over at the Chicago Tribune. Check him out. Make sure you guys subscribe to him if you're into Chicago sports, a wonderful source. And the article was, Chicago Bears Q&A. Has this offseason been a disaster for GM Ryan Pace? Why are there so many inside linebackers on the roster? And why did Rodney Adams get cut? And I wanted to really concentrate and highlight one part of that sentence, and it was the offseason for Ryan Pace. Now, if you're new to us here on Sports from the Couch, I have a lot of different feelings of a Ryan Pace. I think Ryan Pace has hit on a lot of things. I think that he's really done some nice maneuvers. But I think for the most part, I haven't trusted his scouting. I don't like his money management. I think he's done a right at the tier of average to below average for this Bears franchise. And strictly on hitting on a Khalil Mack and having random hits. And then landing Justin Fields is a big thing. And it got me wondering, why haven't the national media really taken hold to what we're doing here locally in Chicago, the greatest city in the world, Chicago IL? Why haven't we really focused on the fact that it was a bad offseason for Ryan Pace? And everything that's happening right now, all this weight, all this drama, all this uncertainty of this offense, of this team, is strictly on the GM and his management, his money management, his scouting, how he puts a roster together. So let's get right into it. The question was, putting Justin Fields aside, how has this not been a disastrous offseason for Ryan Pace? So let's listen to what Brad Biggs had to say. And again, check out the entire article, all the questions that he answered. Of course, one of the best in the business. If you're an NFL fan or a Bears fan, the article is Chicago Bears Q&A. Has this offseason been a disaster for GM Ryan Pace? Why are there so many inside linebackers on the roster? And why did Rodney Adams get cut? Let's get into it here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves. I'm Mike Mercado. It's kind of hard to put Fields aside, isn't it? I understand what you're saying. But when the inquiry is basically, what about the GM's offseason with the exception of the first-round pick? It's sort of a loaded question. Much of what happened this offseason is a result of what the Bears did in previous offseasons. They didn't have a lot of flexibility in free agency because they were right up against the salary cap. They have used a credit card approach to the cap, routinely reconstructing contracts of their highest paid players in order to create cap space from year to year. With the rollback of the cap this year, it all caught up to them. That led to the release of veteran quarterback Kyle Fuller. That likely played at least some role in the decision to cut left tackle Charles Leno. So let's stop there for 1 second, okay? What have been the two biggest issues besides Justin Fields not starting for the Chicago Bears? For there not being a real competition, a faux competition at quarterback. It's been how atrocious the offensive line has looked, how it has not been good enough to keep Justin Fields safe, and that secondary is suspect. And why is that? Money mismanagement. Look, when it comes to front offices, we have to judge things a little different, in my opinion, than we do players on the field, coaches that manage, right? In my opinion. Because the way I'm gonna judge any type of management is how you do the business end of this. Scouting is very important. Have the Bears blown you away with any gems that they found late in drafts that have become MVPs, that have become Pro Bowlers, All Pros? They've had nice players. They've had guys that have contributed that are going to have careers. What about money management? If this was Apple, if this was Microsoft, McDonald's, Best Buy, whatever the company may be, if not only you're not bringing in profits, but you're not hitting in the zeitgeist of culture, you get canned, you lose your job, you get critiqued. And that's not what's happened with Ryan Pace with the McCaskies. That's the issue. And if you've noticed, the reason why I really want to bring this up, and I think it's a very, very fair question, is because it doesn't seem like they're on the hot seat. It doesn't seem like they're walking around with a little fire under their butt. It doesn't seem that way. It seems like they got everything of autonomy they need for as much time as they need. And a lot of that does go to Justin Fields. Cheers, some agua on this beautiful start of a Labor Day weekend. I hope you guys are all safe and sound. Thank you for joining us here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves. I'm Mike Mercado. Now, I really wonder if Ryan Pace is behind this move of Justin Fields not starting. I wonder how much of this is Matt Nagy or how much of this is Ryan Pace. Because these moves, these offseasons, and the way it's worked out, how can you not be worried? Look, I want to start Justin Fields more than anybody. I think he has looked better than Andy Dalton. And I'm sure that the coaches are telling us one thing in practice, but I know what my eyes tell me. I know what the energy is. Justin Fields should probably be starting. But if they're that worried, that's their fault. That's their problem that they need to figure out. Let's continue on. That forced the Bears to shop largely in the bargain bin in free agency, which isn't necessarily a bad thing when you consider some of the players they've overpaid on the open market. Second-round pick Tevin Jenkins, we got to get into this, is sidelined for an undetermined amount of time after back surgery that the team says is not related to back issues that sidelined him late in the season last fall at Oklahoma State. So right there, okay, it's not the same injury that he had at Oklahoma State, but it's a back injury that he also has had in college that made him miss the last season. I'm rooting for the kid. But this is something that a team has to earn the right to do this. If Bill Belichick gets Tevin Jenkins, Bruce Arians, you name somebody, Mike Tomlin, fine. Okay, you've won Super Bowls. You are another class of coach. You're another class of organization right now. You can take that risk. The Bears can't. You have an asset in Justin Fields that's so important, not just for your job, but for the franchise moving forward for hopefully the next 15 years. And you get him a left tackle that's never played left tackle that's hurt? That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. And it has impacted every move since then. Elijah Wilkinson, the swing tackle the Bears signed in free agency, was deemed early in training camp not good enough to start at left tackle. So somebody you brought in and scouted was not good enough. And that led them to summon 39-year-old Jason Peters. Of course, Jason is going to go to the Hall of Fame, but he's a 39-year-old. You're relying on a 39-year-old that was in street clothes getting ready to go to the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he might have some football left. Are you going to rely on him for 17 games? No wonder Andy Dalton needs to play. Right tackle Jermaine Ifedi was sidelined for most of camp with a hip flexor injury suffered in the conditioning test when players reported. All of that has led to a lot of questions about the offensive line. Add a lack of proven depth at cornerback and the public's very clear stance on Andy Dalton as the starting quarterback, and it sure looks like a rough offseason for Pace. And it doesn't just look like one. It is one. Because again, let's say Carolina and Denver don't goof up and pass on Justin Fields and Mac Jones, okay? Where are the Bears then? This is still not a good team. This is not a good roster. This is a waste of very good defensive players. What is going on with Akeem Hicks? You see what I'm saying? This has been all turmoil. It's because the shiny new toy of a potential really nice franchise quarterback has said, look over here, look over here. Don't look right here, don't look right here. And that has been his big saving grace. The whole conversation. And you know what? I could have almost respected the fact that they were doing the Andy Dalton, Justin Fields thing to kind of distract us. The media, fan base, local media, national media, so that we don't get mad at how bad of an offseason it is, how much of a misstep it has been year after year after year for not only Ryan Pace, but Matt Nagy and his offense since 2018. But they're making you talk about this competition, knowing full well who was going to be the quarterback if it was Justin Fields. But not only did they do all that, they wanted their cake, they wanted to eat it too. What was this offseason? And what was this quarterback battle? Look, I'm not telling you that if all things were equal and Andy Dalton won the QB job, starting QB1, it is what it is. But you can't tell me your eyes didn't tell you what you saw. And then if your answer is, well, the offensive line is bad, that's your GM. That is that man that you are still letting get away with only talking once a season, that hides behind, the shadows and doors, doesn't talk to you in a city that has Rick Hahn, that has Jed Hoyer, that has AK and Emmy for the Bulls. This is crazy. It's unacceptable. Let's finish off. This is a wonderful little section of this recent article by Brad Biggs over at the Chicago Tribune. Check them out, our friends over at the Chicago Tribune. Chicago Bears Q&A. Has this offseason been a disaster for GM Ryan Pace? Why are there so many inside linebackers on the roster? And why did Rodney Adams get cut? We finish up our little section that we were checking out here on Sports from the Couch. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, here on Mercado Airwaves. Let me know your thoughts. What have you thought so far of kind of this crazy offseason for Ryan Pace? The Bears are 0-0, and there's a lot we don't know yet. Can the offense take shape in Coach Matt Nagy's fourth season? How will this defense look under first-time coordinator Sean Desai? Will young players such as cornerback Jalen Johnson, wide receiver Darnell Mooney, and tight end Cole Kmet take big steps forward in their second season? I get the pessimism. I've written in length about the question facing the front office, coaching staff, and roster. We'll see very soon how the Bears stack up against the rest of the league and the NFC North. I do believe it's a little unfair, though, to separate the field selection from the rest of the offseason when judging Pace. Everything needs to be taken into consideration. And that is true because if it ends up working out for Justin Fields, if they hit on it, all the mistakes get taken away. Everything else doesn't matter because you got your franchise quarterback. But it's everything that's led to this point that he might have lucked into his quarterback, that he might have lucked into keeping his job. But for 1 second, do not let him off the hook. Shout out. That this guy has put them in bad position time and time again. And having to make bad roster decisions on good players because they put themselves in self-inflicted wounds that were too hard to heal from. That's the fact. That's the fact. Now, yeah, if you hit on Justin Fields, all the credit in the world, you got the right one. And he fell on your lap and you selected him. You did what you had to. But I don't think that it's enough to ignore how bad of an offseason, how bad of off seasons it's been for a Ryan Pace. And that there might not be better people, shout out Louis Riddick, that can do this thing. And I'm getting close to the point of the Matt Nagy thing of like, I don't know if he has the goods. This is the season to find out, right? I'm confident Ryan Pace doesn't have the goods. I've seen enough off seasons. Let's see what happens with this offense. Let's see what happens with Justin Fields. Brad Biggs talks about it, though. If Darnell Mooney is going to take this next step, Cole Kmet's going to take the next step, shouldn't they have chemistry with Justin Fields? Shouldn't they be getting it down with Justin Fields, the quarterback of their future as well? Andy Dalton. I like Andy Dalton. And you hear Ryan Pace also talk about it in the last and only time you'll hear him this season with the media. Best case scenario, they win a lot of football games with Andy Dalton and Justin Fields gets practice with scout team. No, best case scenario, you'll win a lot of football games with Justin Fields as your quarterback. What crazy nonsense world are we talking about? What in the Stranger Things are you talking about? This is crazy. I want to know your thoughts. Look at my voice is shot. Shout out to AEW Dynamite, the Good Brother Night, Alex Mercado. We're at the Now Arena over at Hoffman Estates. Got to see CM Punk come back to Chicago. A big week here in Chicago. Dynamite, All Out, Rampage, all in one weekend. So if you guys are all having that, have fun watching that. Of course, the Cubs and White Sox in full blow. And of course, more than anything, we are just a few days away from Thursday Night Football and the first Sunday in the NFL. But until then, we got plenty to talk about in this city about the Chicago Bears. I want to know your thoughts, though. Should Justin Fields be starting? It's a question you're going to be asking until he starts. And what grade would you give Ryan Pace this offseason? Justin Fields makes it a B off Jump Street. But man, it's been rough going for the Bears in that front office for a long time. Not just with players, but money management and having a bad relationship with the fan base. Think about how much this city loves the Chicago Bears and how much goodwill this front office has lost. And they've been to 2 playoff appearances. Crazy times, my friends. But let me know your thoughts all over the universe. That'll do it for us, guys. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike and Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Mercado Airwaves. We're on all major podcast platforms. Check out the video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Please hit that little bell and subscribe button to be notified every single time we upload a brand new episode. We're also on Roku. Check us out over at The Rewind Sports 60. If you would like to become a producer of the show, support us. Visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We also have swag at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Check us out over at Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. We have marathons and go live sometimes. If you checked and missed out on anything, check us out over at Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. And of course, follow us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves to keep up to date every single time we upload a brand new episode of The Good Brothers, the 2 Nerds of a Feather podcast, Gone Missing, Murder, Mysteries, and more. And of course, Sports from the Couch with our interviews with athletes and celebrities. That's Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. We have a very special episode coming this Monday. Of course, it will be a tier maker episode on Sports from the Couch. That is this Labor Day. But until then, take care of yourself, take care of each other, enjoy all the games, We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.